Hello there, and welcome to the latest Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo. I'm your host, Joe Rimmer, joined today by Ian Doyle. How are we, Ian?
Okay.
And how are we, Theo Squires?
Yeah, I'm okay too, thanks.
How are you, Joe?
Start. I'm fine, thank you. Thanks for asking.
No problem.
Feeling good?
Are you really?
Off for 10 days after today, so yeah.
It's funny because you put that email through just now where you mentioned it at the beginning of the email and the end of the email. It's almost like you're just trying to rub it in.
Yeah, I might be. You're off for a few days as well.
Yeah, but I deserved it.
Okay, well,
I don't really need any more time off.
Yeah, you've had enough. You've had enough, even if you were spending it in a hospital bed. Right, we're not live today, so apologies. We'll be back live next Monday, I think. I'm just looking at our producer who's nodding, so at least that makes a change for him yawning. But yeah, we'll be back on Monday live. But thank you for those of you that have sent in questions or observations. First of all, to Ben, oh, hang on, I've got the wrong thing up here. To Ben Gary, thank you for a couple of questions. We'll get to them throughout the podcast. And I also have an email from Neil Bailey. Neil, thank you for your email. And thanks for listening to us down under, wherever you're listening to us. Thank you so much. It means a lot. If you listen on Apple Podcast or Spotify, as I always say, give us some likes, give us some thumbs up, give us some stars, whatever, where you want to do nice things.
Before we go any further, can we just say that obviously we've lost Beth. We haven't lost her. We haven't lost her.
We did
She's
say
just
goodbye
left
to her
a
on
couple.
the last
True,
pod.
it's true.
Yeah.
But we've got a lasting reminder now of who she is. She's provided us with a mug with her face on it.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I showed mine off in the last pod, but you can show yours. Why do you have Big Bird on your mug?
Because she was once called Big Bird on Twitter, and she found it hilarious, and I found it even funnier. So that's become our little joke. To with the hair.
But goodbye, Beth. See you soon. I've lost my place now.
Nord.
Yeah, we're up to Nord.
Yeah.
But just a big thank you. And if you do want to send us in questions, I'm always happy to take them by email. So joe.rimmer@reachplc.com. That's joe.rimmer@reachplc.com. You can email them in. They always help with the pod. So I've got a couple of questions to ask today.
And say we need them next week, but you're off for 10 days.
Yeah, I'll forward them on.
Please.
I will. I'll forward them on. Yeah, or send them to ian.doyle@reachplc.com. There you go. You'll get them.
Yeah, don't do that.
He's off as well.
Send to theo.squires@reachplc.com. It's all of our names with a dot in the middle at reachplc.com. So choose whoever you'd like to send them to. And a big thank you to our sponsors, Nord, who are a virus protection software. Neil, who didn't know they were. But if you go to nordvpn.com/bloodred, you'll find out all about them and you'll get the best discount off your NordVPN plan. And our link also gives you 4 months extra free on a 2-year plan. There's no risk at all with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. And the link is in the podcast episode description box. I've told you lots about Nord over the years, but if you want to just go on their website and have a look, I'm sure they can tell you much better than I. Anyway, lots to talk about. Liverpool 4, Bayer Leverkusen 0. On Wednesday night, you were both there. It was a bit of a non-event first half, Ian, but Liverpool just stepped it up in the second, and they just sort of blitzed Bayer, didn't they? Who I felt like had done a job on Liverpool in the first half by keeping it very, very tight.
Yeah, they've done a job. But obviously the problem with jobs is you don't want them to be half done because then they just become really annoying. And
that was like a David Brent quote. That was like your philosophy. The problem with jobs is that you don't want them to be half done, otherwise they become annoying.
Yeah,
get on a t-shirt
or
a mug.
Failure, or a mug. Yeah, please don't send us any mugs. Yeah. There's so many of them in here, and that's just around this table. So yes, first half Liverpool. It was another example basically of Liverpool in this new way that they're playing with in terms of control. You could tell from the first 10 minutes they gave it a bit of a go. Certainly with Diaz once. Obviously, he's playing down the middle, and I think Leverkusen took a little time to adjust to that. We'll get onto the second half in a bit. But for the last half an hour of the first half, I think it was fairly even. Leverkusen had an offside goal, which was not offside, it was Dislav handball, which was handball. They had a shout for a penalty, which, while it wasn't a penalty, Van Dijk was a bit lucky in the fact that the player had got goal side of him. But then, second half, as we said, Liverpool kind of walked away with it. I think two things happened. The first thing is that they made a tactical change because they weren't expecting, I think it was Boniface playing on the left, wasn't it? Certainly on the wing for Leverkusen, which meant that they didn't have a number 9 as such, which meant that, in the middle they didn't really know to mark, and in midfield Liverpool were overrun a little bit. But in the second half, the Liverpool made a tactical change. Slot mentioned it. It didn't actually say what it was, but I would imagine it would be tweaking in the sense that you could actually get a few more players into midfield, whether it was pushing Trent in there a little bit, because if you look at the first goal, it comes from Trent playing a pass into Jones, who kind of fell off the number 10 role to where he picked up the ball. If you actually watch the replay, he runs backwards about 5 or 10 yards to get into the space, gets the pass, turns around and plays it through to Diaz. But what other thing that happened before that was Ryan Gravenberch, who hadn't really done much in the first half. He went on that run, didn't he? Where he went past about 2 or 3 players, put it out wide, and I think the shot was blocked, or whatever it was that happened. The crowd responded to that. And we saw against Brighton on Saturday that once the crowd got up for it, Liverpool were difficult to cope with. And
it's a shame they had to pipe it all in, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there was that guy, the Leverkusen fan who said that the Anfield atmosphere is a myth and it's all just playing on the loudspeakers, which is just nonsense. Basically, I couldn't think of anything funny to say. It's just really just a load of rubbish, to be honest. I mean, why would you do that? I don't know, but no, I've been doing going games for 40 years. I've never known any crowd do that. That's
what they do in like the wrestling, don't they? They pipe in.
They don't pipe in the crowd at wrestling, do they?
They do, sometimes.
Do they? There's about 20, 30, sometimes 50,000 there. Surely
they want them to do a certain thing, like boo or cheer, and sometimes they pipe it in.
I didn't know that. There you go. Maybe it's an American thing then. Well, let's not go down the American route this week. Then, of course, Liverpool just ran away with it with the 2 goals, and Anfield played his part again. And, funny speaking after the game, Xabi Alonso was asked about the Anfield atmosphere, and he says, tell the players, but you can tell the players all you want. It's just not the same until you actually go out there and experience it. And he says, and I know exactly what the Liverpool players were thinking because they felt it. I don't know, because he was one. They felt it, and he thought the crowd are with us now. Come on, what was his quote? Something like, now let's go and do this, let's go and win, kind of thing. And he was right, but ultimately that comes from the performance of the players. The players have to set the tone, as it were. And I think something that's happening, certainly over the last couple of games, is I think the crowd are now adjusted to Liverpool aren't just going to go 100 miles an hour all the time. They didn't really do that all the time with the club, but they certainly did it a bit more than is happening under Slot. And there are going to be large passages of games where not a lot happens, but if you're 0-0 second half or 1-0, or even just 1-0 down as against Brighton, you're kicking towards the cop in the second half and Liverpool decide to go up a few gears, which is something that's been notable, is that they have been able to go from first, second gear, 3rd, 4th, 5th, sometimes 6 gears, as against Brighton for those 5 minutes. It's very difficult for other teams to cope with. And we're talking, this is Bayer Leverkusen, who won the Bundesliga last season. I know they've not been particularly on the top of their game this season. I think they conceded 15 goals in 9 or 10 games in the Bundesliga, but they're still a top team. I mean, you look at, I turned to about 70 minutes into the game, and I was looking at, I think they made a substitute, and I thought, wonder when Malcolm Wirtz hasn't come on, and then I had a look on the TV, and he was playing. It's like he hadn't done anything. I genuinely hadn't even noticed him.
I mean, just to go back to the Champions League, watching the results last night as well, Arsenal losing Inter, and a very hilarious Tyrone Mings mistake costing Aston Villa their place at the top of the table as well.
Not that it matters that much.
No, but I think, Theo, and I think because I was listening to the Overlap the other day, and they had an interesting discussion around the types of players in the Champions League and that we don't have the same stars as previously. And Carragher made the point that perhaps that's because all the stars play in England and the English sides kind of feel that they're superior. And I feel like there is a little bit of sniffiness towards the Champions League, and that English clubs expect to sort of progress quite easily. But you look at the likes of Inter, you look at some of the teams Liverpool have played, they're good teams, and beaten by Leverkusen 4-0. It's not to be sniffed at, is it? It's a really good result against a very, very good team. I think that was their second defeat in 18 months, something along those lines. Obviously, they went unbeaten, didn't they?
It was third defeat, yeah, because they lost once in the league this season to Leipzig, and they lost against Atalanta in the Europa League.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So, I mean, they obviously have been doing incredible things there. I don't necessarily think that result will be seen as the positive result it really is outside of Liverpool circles.
Well, it feels like the best statement result from Slot's reign so far, but you've got the mark against it, as Doyley's just gone through. They aren't what they were last year. So you're not looking at a Bayer Leverkusen as you would if it was a Bayern Munich. They're now where you expect their level to be, as in going for a Champions League place, maybe forging a title challenge every so often. Looking at last year as a one-off, but we'll see if they can build it up again and be a bit more consistent. But it is still an amazing result. Like, if you looked at the fixtures when they came out, Real Madrid was the toughest, and then Leverkusen was probably the second toughest, and Liverpool could slip up here. I think, Doyle, you actually said, didn't you, before the game, this is a game they can lose. It doesn't really matter. It was that free pass there.
I think that's what I actually said.
You probably worded it better.
I actually said this is probably the first game this season that Liverpool didn't necessarily have to win.
There you go. That is worded more positively.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, so Liverpool could go in it with those lower expectations, going, this is a test, and then see how it goes. It has been a recurring theme this season where the first half, you just have to have control on it, see how you go, get in at half time, and then Arne Slot can make those tactical changes.
Sorry to interrupt, that is impressive. He seems to do that a lot, and he seems to make small tweaks that make a huge difference within games.
Yeah, it's like something that has really stood out from him, the fact that Liverpool only need those 45 minutes to then go and take control of games, step up a level, and get the win as well. I think the fans know that too. Like, they did make a bit of noise early on because the Leverkusen support, the German fans, they're always amazing wherever they go. So Liverpool sort of had to respond to that a little bit, but it was a bit more subdued in that first half. Then you see the changes, they get something to bounce off, and then the atmosphere is great in that second half. You get loads of goals. And they just played really well. It is that statement result, along with the Manchester United one. But Liverpool's performances, when you look down at it, they haven't put a full 90 minutes in yet, because it is get to half-time and then do that little tweak. So when you see that full package, maybe then you'll look at it in a different way. But then City are slipping up, Arsenal are slipping up, Villa are slipping up. They are top of the table in Champions League and Premier League for a reason. You just hope they don't run out of steam, because you've seen so many big teams in the Champions League who are not struggling, but adjusting to this format, losing games you'd expect them to win, whereas Liverpool are making it look relatively easy by having this control of the matches.
I'd argue still that their most complete performance was at Old Trafford, because I think they did control that from start to finish, with the exception of about 2 minutes at the start when United came out. But other than that,
when it went to 3-0, United had a few chances, but the game was finished by then. I think with the game on Tuesday, is the first half was just a Champions League. I know it's not the group stage, but it was a Champions League group stage game. Neither team wanted to give very much away. And of course, and I mentioned this before, you're in that slightly odd situation where you're not playing them again. So this is the only time you're going to play them. And weirdly, I think Real Madrid are struggling with this a little bit. You know, where they're thinking, we're playing this, we can get them next time. It's like, there isn't a next time, because you might play them later on down in the knockout stage. I like this league stage. The
problem with
it is that no one really knows where they stand yet, because it's never happened before. And it will be and it's only if they stick with it for a couple of years, you'll know roughly what points you need to get. Then you'll know whether or not it makes much of a difference that you ended up in the top 8 or between 9 and 24. You'll only know this over time, so it's this kind of great unknown. But again, I said this on a podcast the other day, the only thing you can do is just keep winning your games, and that's what Liverpool are doing. I think, it's going back to what you were talking about. The Champions League is, people are sniffing at it and stuff like that, or looking down at its height. I wouldn't. It's still whether it's still. I mean, I think. Yeah, I think they're only doing that because they went, look, before this round of games, that the 3 top teams were the 3 English teams. That's partly due to the fixtures, like Aston Villa's fixtures. I know they played Bayern Munich at home, but they had 2, they played Bologna at home with Liverpool beat without playing particularly well. They played away, I can't remember what the first game was. Young Boys, which they won. They're not great. And getting beaten Bruges wasn't a particularly great result for them. Although if Mings doesn't do what he did, it was going to be 0-0, and then you can just say, that's what happens in Europe. But I don't think overall the English teams are particularly better. Otherwise, they'd win it every single year. They kind of get near to it. They get in finals and stuff, but they weren't in the final last season. But
that's why I think that there is an element of, especially in the group stages, the old ones, and now in this, it's like you beat Bayer Leverkusen 4-0. The Liverpool went and won in Leipzig, and I thought it was a really, really good result against a team that were unbeaten in the Bundesliga so far this season, or certainly done very well, hadn't conceded many goals at all, and obviously beaten Bayer Leverkusen. So having a really good season, very solid at home, and Liverpool went there, won. I know they conceded a few chances, but had a fair few other chances themselves. So I think you look at other teams and you look at the way they have to go and navigate these games. Bologna were a test at home, and Liverpool figured it out.
The one thing that we don't know is the impact of them playing 2 games in late January in this competition, because that's never happened before.
And then also the knockout playoff round if you're not in the top 8.
Well, exactly. So, but if the ideal thing that Liverpool are trying to clearly get sorted is just win all your games as soon as possible to get the points total you think is going to make you finish the top 8. Then you can start rotating and resting players in the last couple of games. Like, say, for example, they beat Real Madrid, they'll have 15 points. Then they go 3 games, 2 away, 1 at home. Even though Lille have actually been doing reasonably well, Girona haven't away. They've struggled a little bit. PSV, I think they won, didn't they? In fact, did they beat Girona? Yeah, they beat Girona 4-0, didn't they?
If you finish top, do you get an easier draw?
Well, if you finish top, you can't play the team that's second until the final, for example.
Yeah, you're seeded,
and you're seeded as the first team. Yeah. So the draw is not so much a draw, although it is a little bit of a draw.
There's an incentive to finish top.
Yeah, it's like that's why it's a league. The higher up you finish.
I know how it works.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? It's like you're not going to win it just from finishing top, but there is a reason for being up there. You can't just scrape into 24th and then think you're going to win it unless, let's face it, that's what Real Madrid are going to do.
Yeah, I still think that league format is still a bit of a non-event because Real Madrid are going to be in the top 24. It's not like recent years where Manchester United lose a couple of games and they get knocked out of Europe altogether.
So they've got to navigate another playoff round. But then again, that goes back to what we talked about Real Madrid. They'll probably just think, well, now we've got this team twice. We know we can beat them over two games.
In one of the press conferences, Arne Slot, he referenced that, didn't it? It's harder doing that preparation because you haven't played them before. You've only got that one game. So it is different when it's going to become knockout football and you've just got to approach it, get your points to get through.
I quite like that you're playing a variety of teams. I always loved growing up, and this was obviously the case.
You love growing up?
for people who the old European Cup format, but obviously I love the UEFA Cup because it was straight knockout, two legs, and you just play a variety of teams. And it felt quite exciting, and I feel like, all right, it's not as exciting in the sense that there's not the jeopardy of the straight knockout, but you feel like you're playing different teams. There's lots of different trips. There's a bit more about it than I felt like the group stage format. They didn't feel as much jeopardy on it because it felt like you could sort of lose a couple of games and then win the next three.
Also, it was seeded to the point where they were just the same teams playing each other again and again and again. And I think even UEFA got onto that.
Yeah.
It was just like, how many times can Man City play Shakhtar Donetsk?
Yeah. Whereas this now, like for a bit, it must have been fun to be an Aston Villa fan and feel like you're the best team in Europe for a little bit.
It's never fun to be an Aston Villa fan.
No. But it gives those teams a chance to be right up in this league. I don't know. I think it's all right. And I think, like you say, I think we'll have to see the impact of how teams cope after January when they've got the extra games. That doesn't feel like a good thing.
And also, it's got to count against the English teams because almost everybody else would have had a winter break and then come straight back into it. And by then, the English teams would be like, oh, we just got through Christmas. We're absolutely exhausted.
Yeah. Well, that's why it's important to be in the top 8.
Well, exactly.
You miss that playoff round, so then you get a couple of midweeks free.
Like a piece. Before we talk, obviously there's lots of player performance to talk about, but I just want to talk about that Curtis Jones pass. You've already mentioned it, Theo. It was like a PlayStation pass. It was like one of those ones that you don't actually see in real life that often, but I thought it was an incredible touch, bit of skill, and just sums up a player who I think has been very important to Liverpool this season, has played really well in two different positions, whether it be slightly more advanced or slightly deeper. And there's talk, or has he been picked? I was off yesterday in the England squad.
The squad's announced today. I'd imagine he's going to get picked because he's in form, isn't he?
But just feels like someone who Slot likes, has assumed a bit more responsibility and feels a bit more suited to the Slot system.
Yeah, I've had this debate with Kiefer a few times in recent weeks where I think Jones should be in the team ahead of McAllister. I think he's playing a lot better. And he suits that deeper role more because he's a bit more physical and he's a bit more mobile. But he can get forward and then he can get back to do the defending like we see how good he is with threading that through ball through to Diaz, and that was something that Slot wanted them to do. That's why Diaz was up front. So at some point in the game, they could try and get him behind, create that space, and we know Curtis Jones is so good at making that late run into the box or spotting that pass. There were so many times against Leverkusen where he had like 2-3 players on his heels and he was still shrugging them off, carrying the ball forward, and he's really looking so confident at the moment. Like Slot said after the game, you could put him anywhere, he's just playing that well. He was a loss when he was injured at the start of the season. It was fortunate that Liverpool didn't have too many injuries there, but it's just good now that he is staying injury-free, and they can take him in out with Sabosai, with McAllister. They can rotate that trio, but he is the one you can put in any of those roles, and he'll do a job for you. He deserves to be in that starting 11 for me at the moment. He's playing so well. It was a fantastic pass. It's like, I think someone's pointed out, it's Alonso-esque, isn't it? It's one of those ones you saw him do so many times. I think TNT did a montage of some of his best assists, and he'd be proud of that Jones one.
Yeah. I was going to say about Curtis, what's the one thing that Curtis used to be criticised for when he was playing?
Holding on to it too long.
And what's the best strength that he's got now playing under Arne Slot?
He holds the ball well.
So the one thing that under Klopp that a lot of fans didn't like is that he kept onto it too much because Liverpool had to play a million miles an hour. Is now the absolute strength, which is getting him into the team and keeping him and in there. And then, yeah, I think he should be in instead of Szoboszlai. There you go. So he's better than two players at present on form, and I don't think any of them could argue. In fact, he's probably better than Gravenberch. He's probably Liverpool's informed midfielder.
Yeah,
to be perfectly honest, he could play in all of those positions, but yeah,
Still say it's getting that balance right, because against Chelsea, one of the disallowed goals was him taking too many touches. But when you get confidence, you get rhythm. You know when to release it, when to hold on to it.
Well, just overall, it's suiting him more. And yeah, he's. I also think the Champions League suits him as well, because it's a slightly slower pace, and again that fits into it. Because his best performance for Liverpool was in Porto. What was that? About three years ago now, where they won 5-1 in a group game, and he set up 4 goals. So, and then got injured, some kind of crazy injury. He's been a bit unlucky with very odd injuries. Was that an eye one? Did he get an? I think it was an eye one, wasn't it?
It rings a bell, actually.
Yeah, he had like a strange eye.
21-22, wasn't it?
He had a strange eye injury, so he's had all sorts of weird ailments, but he is someone that, you know, I've seen him playing since he was at the academy, and you're going to see he's there. Bless you. Yeah. I've seen him since the academy, so I've been banging on about him for years, and there are other fans who aren't quite so keen because he didn't cost £40 million from somewhere else, or £50 million, and I think that'll always be held against him, but. You know, there's a reason why Klopp brought him into the team. There's a reason why 5 years down the line he's now competing for a place in a team that's top of the Champions League table and top of the Premier League.
Well, if Harvey Elliott hadn't got injured at the start of this season, there is a reason to believe those two could be the ones starting at the moment with Gravenberch. And that's something Klopp predicted, didn't he? Was it away at Southampton? Or
did you mean Gravenberch?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he made that prediction that these two will be first choice, and there is that slant against them because they didn't cost a lot of money, as Doyle just said. But Elliott was in such good form last year. Jones is now, like, you can't sniff at them just because they didn't cost loads. They are outperforming, or Jones is now Szoboszlai, McAllister, and that's £100 million worth of talent.
Yeah, I mean, and Jones as well. I think he suffers from, when he first came through, I must admit, I thought he was going to play further forward, and I thought he would be a very attacking player, and even come in sometimes off the wings. And I think it's taken some time to work out where he's played best. And I'd actually go as far as saying I don't think attacking midfielders, certainly in Klopp's system, with that, you know, I've always felt that about Harvey Elliott. Felt like he ended up having to play on the right and cut in because he didn't really play with that sort of player. You know, once Coutinho left,
well, there were 3 all-rounders, weren't they, in midfield? It tended to be under.
Yeah,
with one of them more defence-minded than the other two.
Yeah, so I felt like it's taken Curtis Jones a while to sort of find his niche in Liverpool's team, whereas now I think he really feels more at home under Slot style and can play in either one of those more advanced or defensive positions. And because Liverpool often see a lot of possession, he's very good. But of course, I remember Slot speaking about after the Aston Villa game, Nottingham Forest game, when they sat in. Afterwards, he said, didn't he, that under me, I would expect my team to start learning how to unpick those low blocks. And I'm not saying Bayer Leverkusen played a low block on Wednesday night, but what they certainly did was snuff out any space and make Liverpool really work to find it. And they're going to need players who are able to do what Curtis Jones did to unpick those types of teams. And I think Slot would be very happy to have seen him do that. And like you say, get Diaz in behind. And it was a wonderful finish. Talking Luis Diaz, what did you make of him in the middle? And what have you made of him this season so far? I know Theo's got a little theory, so we'll...
A theory, yeah.
But we'll let him come
what was better? What was it? The Hungary International. What was it the other week?
Yeah, that was all it was.
Anyway, let's be honest. You don't really want to see him playing there that often because that would suggest that all of Liverpool's forwards are injured. That wouldn't be a good thing. But you know, it's the one thing that he's got is that he's quite a persistent player. Bit annoying. He must be really annoying to play against because he just doesn't stop. And in the first half, he gave himself a little bit of space to run at them in the first half. But then in the second half, I think he must have been told because Liverpool played that much a little bit further forward, just go on the shoulder of the defense, which is how he ended up getting the first goal, obviously. And the second one was a good piece of opportunism, really. Yeah. He was quite strong holding off the defender. And the third one was that was Nunez's shot, which...
Another good piece of opportunism.
Again, you
want to see a striker doing that.
Exactly. Then. So he's in the right place. But overall for his season, I think he started off very well. But Cody Gakpo, he's 4 goals in his last 3 games playing on the left wing. And it's interesting that 2 of the last 3 games, they played the pair of them. Both times Gakpo's been on the left even though he could have gone down the middle. And that quite clearly is a sign that Gakpo is a left winger now. That's it. They don't really want to play him down the middle. And Diaz was on the right at Brighton, scored. Gakpo got 2 in the League Cup, that is. And then, obviously, against Leverkusen, Gakpo gets his goal after which was a very good goal, by the way. Again, Diaz was involved in that central position, plays it out wide to Salah.
It was a great cross.
Cross comes in, yeah. Again, Salah, people didn't really do much. Set up 2 goals.
What, it was
like the game against Brighton where is it Estupinan? Yeah, he kind of just wore him out in the end. I think he did the same with Hincapié as well. I think he just got so tired with him in the end that he was able to, take advantage in the last half an hour, which is what Salah does, and which is why under Klopp you could see why he was very reluctant to sub him, because he knew that he was just going to tire out defenders.
I always go back to a game. I've never sat so low down for a game. Well, not for a long time anyway. For the Newcastle game last year, the 4-2, and sitting right so far down on the touchline next to Salah's side in the second half, and watching him repeatedly run at their defenders. When you're sitting up high, you don't get the feeling for it that you do when you're low down. You see the pace that the game's played at, the ability that the players have, and just like the amount of work they put in. And I think it was actually Dan Burn. I might be wrong, but I feel like they might have played Dan Burn at left back that night.
I can't remember that, but I do remember there was one up at Newcastle when Keita scored. They won 1-0. Yeah. I think Salah came on as sub towards the last half hour, last 20 minutes. He had about 3 chances to score straight away, and there was one where Dan Burn, he almost broke away. Dan Burn came across, and I can't remember whether he did a dive header or did something just to stop him, like 40 yards from goal, and he was on the floor, and you could just see him in his face, just like this, as if like
that's what it was. And it Salah, because he doesn't really. Salah's never you're never going to do the most amazing piece of skill like Firmino would do, these types of pirouettes and stuff like that. It was just like showing for it, getting it, running with it, showing for it, getting it. And 9 times out of 10, he wouldn't take it past him. But you could see by it towards the end of the game.
Yeah, he only has to do it once. He only has to do it once because his quality is that good when he crosses it that he only needs the 1, possibly 2 opportunities. And the other thing, if you're a defender, it's not just what's doing it, it's the concentration. Yeah. That's the thing that does you in the end. You can run around all day, but your brain's going to get tired in the end. And that's basically what's cost Brighton on Saturday and what cost Leverkusen, which is what made it from... It probably wasn't a 4-0 game, let's be honest. It was more like a 2-0, but it's what turned it from 2-0 to 4-0. And
if Darwin Núñez doesn't make it at Liverpool as a forward, he could make it an assistant referee, because did you see he immediately knew that Salah was onside and was quick to tell the linesman, who was, strangely flagged, really. It just looked onside.
It's very early flag. They're supposed
I
to let it go.
I thought it was onside as well straight away,
your theory on Diaz, perhaps he's a little bit like the man that was in the opposite dugout.
Well, we've seen it a couple of times, haven't we? Alonso and I suppose Luis Suarez as well. Players that flirted with an exit one year, it's not quite happened. Made more Alonso, not been at his best a couple of years before that, and then he just has the absolute season of his life. Maybe that is what we're seeing now from Diaz. Hopefully, if he keeps it up, it's not going to be a case of he's playing for a move and he's going to go next summer. He's fighting for that place in the team. It's very good competition there up against Cody Gakpo, and the fact that trying to find a way to get both of them in the team or give them both equal opportunities to start. But Diaz at the moment, he's like this weird mix of Mane and Firmino, because he's got that direct pace in terms of he can get in front, he can get past defenders, but he's got the trickery as well. And seeing him central where he's dropping deep or getting that past the defender on that last line is a really deadly mix. Like we said on this podcast before, he's been unfortunate the last couple of years in terms of he had the knee injury at a bad time, then everything with his parents. It's like now he's been unleashed. And Arne Slot, we know his track record for improving forwards. We all assumed it would be Darwin Núñez.
How do you know that?
Yeah, how did we know the track record?
It's almost as though someone wrote a piece on this.
How come we've never written this?
But with Diaz now...
That's the point.
Have we?
Yeah, I don't know. He's referring to a great piece written by himself.
When did you write this?
I've forgotten about. I can't remember, sorry, go on.
But I think Diaz is now joint leading goal scorer with Salah, and he's well on track to beat his previous best before Christmas. He's had incredible...
His previous best?
It was 13, which was Mane's worst for Liverpool. So the fact that he can add those goals now, and he's showing that he can play anywhere across the front three, because I'm assuming his last 3 starts have come in each of the 3 positions in the front 3. He's just incredible form. Point, He normally starts the season well and then drops off. We've got the mitigating circumstances there, but now he's just been unleashed and he's been so good.
So what was that piece you wrote, and when?
It was. I can't actually remember it really.
When was it?
Theo referenced it before. I think it was back in August. I think it was about Nunes and
the Mexican striker, wasn't it?
In his club's
Jimenez, that's it, yeah.
He has found ways of always with his number 9.
Well, he spoke about Jimenez, and he said that in the first 4, 5, 6 months he just hardly scored. But after that, he just went like that. Yeah. So maybe that's what's going to happen with Nunes.
Yeah, but it happened with Mane to an extent, didn't it? Where, like you say, I think his first season he scored 30, and he played off the right, didn't he? His first season.
Then he got injured, missed the end, and when Salah came in, he couldn't quite get his position right. It's only when Coutinho left.
Yeah, but that you just wonder whether that's starting to happen with Diaz now, because we've always, I think Liverpool are a better team when Diaz is in it, and even when Gakpo's playing so well, I think I'd always prefer Diaz.
Remember in the summer where suddenly Diaz went rubbish? When everyone all the fans on social media were like, just get rid of him.
It's just a flirt with something new, isn't it? And I think with Gordon, people were attracted to the idea of bringing in Gordon. I don't know why, he's a good player, but actually look at the levels that Diaz is giving Liverpool at the moment, and I don't think the two are comparable, certainly at the moment.
The debate was whether he was already showing his best years or if he had another level, and he's shown that he's got another level. It was interesting hearing from Arne Slot after the game where he's talking about why he picked that lineup as he did, and it was Jonathan Tah, one of the best defenders in Germany, but he prefers playing against a target man, so that's why he didn't want Gakpo central, because he's still a big unit. He didn't want Nunes there. He wanted Diaz. He wanted someone who was going to drop deep, but then could get in behind as well. So the fact that they have got, at the moment, 4 really good attacking options, when the other 2 are back fit, 6, you can see Slot's way of looking at it, defences, weaknesses, and choosing that best trio. Obviously, Salah's going to start 9 times out of 10, but when you've got 5 international forwards who have all proven their quality time and time again over the years, it's certainly a difficult thing for defenders to come up against. Like Bayer Leverkusen would have been looking at that Liverpool lineup. They wouldn't have known who was playing up front. They wouldn't know who was on the left wing. That makes it even harder for them to find their shape when the game's underway.
I really wanted them to score an own goal on Wednesday nights for the back page. Could be Tah, mate.
Yeah, well, this is even worse than your Hungary thing. You had Tah on one team and Tah on the other one. Trent Alexander-Arnold.
You have to explain it. Yeah. Just going quickly before we move on, are we seeing a bit more flexibility with Slot? Because when he came in, he almost spoke about and gave off the impression that he doesn't really move players around. They have their certain positions. I remember him talking in the press conference.
I know what you're saying.
That's quickly changed.
But it changes because he's a manager. Well, he's a head coach, technically.
He called himself a manager on Wednesday.
He did, didn't he, actually? Yeah. Maybe they should pick up on that.
To be fair, I think it's so hard, isn't it, when you're so used to... I must write Liverpool manager into pieces all the time. And I remember I had a headline the other day, I corrected myself. But when you've called a manager for so long, to get used to head coach, my dad must be really struggling.
Boss. What was the question? Oh yeah. So, but what's not changed is the formation. The formation has not changed. There may be some tactical tweaks in terms of moving players around a little tiny bit, ask them to do slightly different jobs, but it's 4-2-3-1 as much as at the start of the season it's like, I'd be disappointed if I'm a manager who's said that I played 4-2-3-1. Well, you do. You do certainly do in the defensive setup, a bit different when you go forward, but that's the same for, you'd like to think most teams. I remember saw an interview, I may have mentioned this before, with Thierry Henry talking about Pep at Barcelona. He said, look, we organise you all up to this point. It was like 2/3 down the pitch, and says after that you can just do what you want. And I think there might be a little bit of that with Slot, I suspect, because I know he's very much at he's a big fan of that Barcelona team. In fact, it was only Barcelona and Brighton that he would watch when he was growing up, apparently. But to be fair, Brighton, good team to watch. They played well at Liverpool. I think it's, when you've got these players, you've got the injuries, why on earth would you not go, well, rather than bring in an untried player from the under-18s just because he plays up front, we've got this other player who's a Colombia international and he's played a lot of games. Let's just play him down the middle and see what happens. And of course, he scores a hat-trick.
Can we get through a couple of questions now from Ben? Thanks very much for sending them in, Ben. We'll start with, will Slot start rotating Van Dijk and Salah in more than just the Carabao Cup? They're clearly in great shape, but 2 games a week seems it might take its toll sooner rather than later. That is a worry for me, Theo, going in towards the back end of the season. We're not really going to see the effects now, but the extra games in the Champions League, if Liverpool do get far into the FA Cup and other competitions, it could take its toll.
December, January is probably the time where you start to consider that rotation. We saw it a couple of times from Jurgen Klopp, and we have seen it with Mohamed Salah in the past, where there'll be occasional midweek games where you do just take him out, bring him on with 20 to go.
Towards the end in Europe, if they're leading the league.
Yeah, if they're leading it, you've got 3 games there potentially where you can just rotate your attack. Van Dijk's the difficult one because he's never been rotated out the Liverpool team because he's such a leader. It's always him and someone else. But we saw with Joe Gomez coming on at the weekend, he did so well that there isn't that massive drop-off if he's in that form for changing your centre-backs. But it's normally your defence, you want that stability there. But he's rotating them with the full-backs more than we ever saw with Jurgen Klopp. So maybe it is something he will consider. It is going to be his first festive period. It's going to be even more intense because of the Champions League. We know they've got the League Cup quarter-final. You could get a semi-final in there soon. The FA Cup's going to come. There will be chances to change it around a little bit.
I can see Salah moving, but Van Dijk?
Well, the thing is, we say this every single season, right? And Van Dijk never gets rotated out of the team. And neither does Salah. The only reason Van Dijk missed a fair bit of one season is because Jordan Pickford tried to cut him in half. And then obviously Mohamed Salah got injured at the
he'll clip that,
African.
He will clip that.
Well, it's true though. That's why Van Dijk was out for so long. But what other injuries he had? Just doesn't get injured, does he? Now he's now going to get injured. Sorry, everybody. Yeah. Well, the point being is that he's not a player you rotate out of the team. You will not play him in certain games, like you won't play in the League Cup. Going back to the Champions League thing in January, if they win against Southampton in the League Cup, there's a 2-legged semi-final. The second leg, I think, is in the beginning of February. But there's going to be 2 FA Cup games in there, 2 Champions League games that might not mean that much. And suddenly you go, oh, well, after the busy games all in December with all the league games, now's the time where we can rest players and then build them up for the second half of the season, which is something that they'll be thinking about. But in terms of Salah, again, he looks after himself that well that unless he goes away with Egypt and gets injured, because when was the last time he got injured? Played for Liverpool.
Just touching this again. This bookcase is wooden bucket.
But there was obviously he aggravated the one, but that was still the same injury. But again, you can't just not players and not play players just because you think they might get injured at some point. Because what happens if they get injured when they come back from being rotated? You go, well, you may as well just play them in the other game. So it's to do with what the
great Brendan Rodgers away at Real Madrid.
Well, don't even get me started on that. That was 10 years ago last week, wasn't it?
Was it, yeah.
Oh, this week, sorry. 10 years, I think it was this week.
Sounds like a piece.
It's really one you can repub.
No, don't, let's not go down that road. You've made me really angry now. Joe, I don't want to think about that. Anyway, there you go. So Liverpool playing Real Madrid in a couple of weeks in a game which they don't necessarily need to win. I'm pretty sure they're not going to be rested players because they don't think they're going to win. Yeah, anyway, sorry.
It leads us quite nicely on to Ben's second question. He says, do you see Quansah getting more of a chance this season, or do you think he's 4th choice now? And limited to the early rounds of the Cups, is it a concern for him that Gomez replaced Konate at the weekend and Quansah only got a few minutes last night when the game was won?
Well, I would say on that, I think it was very pointed that Quansah came on. I think it was Slot saying, we haven't forgotten about you. You had a good game against Brighton until the last couple of minutes. We're all slightly wrong. I think they brought him on purpose in the game on Tuesday just to say, yeah, it's okay, you're still part of this group, because they could have easily brought on Gomez. Could have brought on Endo, couldn't he? Played him and moved things around a little bit just for the end. But decided to bring on Quansah. I think that was quite a good piece of man management or man head coachment.
Well, Slot's explanation, wasn't it, that Quansah was lacking a bit of fitness against Brighton, whereas Gomez was looking in better shape, so that's why he then made that change in the league game. And you can understand that in terms of Gomez is that much more experienced. He's had a difficult summer where he could have been sold to Newcastle, but he's still come in with a point to prove, and he's showing, I am still here. Whereas Quansah, he finished last season first choice. He was first choice in pre-season. He starts that first game of the season. It's a new manager after everything went so well. He's thinking, what's happening here? He needed maybe that arm around the shoulder, but to be taken out of the stress of it all as well. So it's just like Doyle said, that man head coaching. And with Gomez, he isn't going to be in good form because he's got that point to prove.
It's still man management, by the way.
I just think with Quansah, as long as the club are telling him, and I'm sure they are, he's just signed a new contract, the right things. He's only a young boy, really, isn't he? In the grand scheme of things, he's playing in a position where it's not one you rotate as much, so you kind of have to get in like you did last season and stay in. And ahead of him is one of, if not Liverpool's greatest centre-back of all time.
Well, Konate is the one player we haven't mentioned there. He's the one that will get rotated out eventually. I mean, he's now played, 9 league games in a row, which is the most he's ever played. I know he got stood on by Van Dijk, but he's quite clearly okay. But The international break coming up. It's away with France. We know sometimes what happens over there. So, there's every chance that one of Gomez or Quanta starts against Southampton in the league next time up, and they're certainly going to start in the League Cup there. Yeah. So there are games coming up. It depends if they get in the FA Cup, but I've just mentioned before about the Champions League. So these players will get the minutes. It's just a matter of making sure that they are ready for it. And as we saw, as Theo said, with Gomez against Brighton, he was ready to come in, and that was the right decision because Gomez was probably the best player on the pitch in the second half.
Yeah. We'll point out with centre-backs, it is the position you also don't need to rotate as much because they don't make the same total of sprints. You think the midfield's going box to box, the forwards are trying to make that killer movement, the full-backs up and down as well, whereas the centre-backs, we know the Van Dijk...
Especially at a club like Liverpool.
Yeah.
Well, and also they're not... And Trent's not going into midfield as much anymore, so whoever's playing the right side of centre-back doesn't have to run around quite as much.
So they're less likely to get those muscle injuries, and so that's probably worked in Konate's favour.
Run into each other in training today, and they've all been ruled out for the season.
The Youth League, you were there.
Yes, I was there
on Wednesday, and it was pretty impressive.
It was a good game. It was a good game. Yeah, Liverpool went 1-0 down early on with a penalty. Conor Miskew fouled, and the name of the number 10 I can't remember for Bayer Leverkusen, but he put it away. But then after that, Liverpool played really well. There was quite a lot of good performances. One that I should pick out is Trent Cohn-Doherty, which is easy for you to say, against Leipzig. And they were 3-0 down, weren't they, at Leipzig, where they were overpowered. But in the last 20 minutes, he had about 4 or 5 really good chances and missed them all. But didn't affect him. Against Leverkusen, he was up and down that wing. He was running at them all the time. Like Salah, and he just tired them out in the end. And he ended up getting his goal in I think it was the second minute of injury time to make it 4-1. There were a lot of good performances in that game. I know people make a lot of Rio and Gamoa. He set up the goal for Kirol Figueroa. I'm doing well with his pronunciations, aren't I? Yeah. But that was for the third goal, which took really well actually. But first half, best player was Trey Nyoni, but by a long way took the game by the scruff of the neck. You can see why he's probably going to get another chance, I think, in the first team, probably sub again, Southampton, the League Cup. He's still only 17, but you can tell there's a player there. And, Leverkusen weren't quite the physical threat that Leipzig were in the last game. I think Liverpool struggled with that a little bit, but some of the football Liverpool played second half, they were just relentless, and it was a little bit like the first team, really. They just kept going at it, and they kept finding the spaces, and then they got the goals in the end, and I don't think anybody could have complained with the results. In the Youth League, by the way, they only play 6 games, not 8. So they don't play those final 2 games, which means they don't play against Lille at home and PSV away. And the top 22 go through to a playoff round, and Liverpool, I think, currently 11, 12, 13, something like that. But they got 7 points from the 4 games. Probably another win will do it. And the 2 games they've got left to Real Madrid at home, which will be another interesting one.
I don't think they're doing that well, aren't they, this year, though, Real Madrid?
I think they're doing okay. I think they've had 2 wins and 2 losses. I think that, well, certainly that's what the first team have had. I mean, I haven't paid that much attention.
If only someone had a laptop to look it up and see what the Youth League table was.
I was looking at
you're shopping. You're shopping.
It's just all that.
Yes, but no, I think it's such an important competition because you look at the players who've come through that. Curtis Jones, he was the best player in 2019-20 in the competition until he moved up to the first team, and then Liverpool were, all able to take it that seriously. Ben Doak 2 years ago was very good. Liverpool got to the quarterfinals. He got injured early on at Sporting Lisbon. They ended up losing 1-0, partly because he didn't play the game. Harvey Elliott's played in it, scored in it against Benfica, I think, in a knockout game. He's been going back to Nico Williams, obviously not Liverpool now, but
to be honest, you say what you want. No one watching is remembering what these did in the UEFA.
Well, exactly, yeah. But the point is, they remember it.
Yeah,
they remember it as players, and they're playing against their peers from different countries who they don't play all the time, which is why other competitions such as the Premier League International Cup is quite important for the under-21s. Not quite the same because they're always playing at home, and it's not quite the same level of competition. But the Youth League's important. They missed it last year, and one of the things getting back into the Champions League is it's able to give their players this exposure because, it does prepare them for going into big European games and going into games, Premier League games, because they know what to expect. They know the standard. These are the best players of their age across the whole of the continent.
Well, the social media accounts for the Youth League and maybe UEFA as well, they're always putting out Jones clips from that season. 18, 19,
That's
19,
because
20.
he was really good.
He stood out. He was superb in it. He got so many goals, so many assists. He was a level above everything there.
Bobby Clark 2 years ago was the best player at it.
Aston Villa then on Saturday evening, late.
Will they remember that goal kicks, you're not allowed to handle them?
Yeah,
take them?
it's a tricky game, though, isn't it, Theo? I mean, they've actually gone, I think, 4 without win, as things stand. But a couple of the mums in the Carabao Cup, which they will have made a lot of changes, I'm sure. And then I watched the Tottenham game last weekend, and they played very well in the first half, but Tottenham sort of came out for the second and really got the better of them and sort of blitzed them. But they'll be tricky opposition, won't they, for Liverpool? I mean, they're the 4th biggest test so far in the Premier League, and Emery's always seems to be able to find ways of getting results. So what are your thoughts ahead of the weekend?
I think it's a good time to play Aston Villa. Like, they started the season well, but it's probably catching up on them a little bit now that they've got that Champions League football that they are playing every midweek, because the squad's not as big as some of the teams who regularly compete in Europe. And I don't think they've had too many injuries, but it's still a new experience for them. They haven't rotated too much. So when you think that they are not in the best run of form, whereas Liverpool form of their lives, there's no reason why Liverpool can't just keep it going. It'll be a massive statement if Villa could come and step it up after these recent results and get a win at Anfield. But Liverpool are just so good at the moment, they should have enough to do it. Like, Villa are always going to find it a bit more difficult come into this autumn period, these winter months, because it takes its toll. If you're not used to playing every midweek, you are going to run out of steam. Usually happens, like we saw it with Newcastle, was it last year? Yeah. Where they got knocked out in the group stages. It is a big adjustment when you're not a Champions League regular.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
I love Emery, by the way. Yeah, absolutely love him. I think he's very polite, and that goes a long way.
What's his interview with Carragher, and Carragher asked him a question to start with, and he stopped and went, "Good evening."
Yeah, it
was like he had to get that in and say, say hello before he could go. But I do like him as a character.
Yeah, in terms of Villa, I think I didn't see the game against Tottenham, but Tottenham can do that too when they click into a bit of gear, especially when Son
he took Son off. So Son sort of started the comeback. And then he took the ball, and he scored the
next Solanke scored twice, didn't he? Yeah, that's right. Yeah. He was due a goal, though, wasn't he? He's been knocking on the door a little bit recently. With Villa, just stop John Duran having a shot. He absolutely loves having a shot. I remember when they played.
He plays for 15 minutes at the end.
Yeah, he only played for Liverpool. He played against Liverpool last season when Liverpool won 3-0. Which I remember after the game that John McGinn said Liverpool will be up there this season. They were really good. I remember thinking, really? It shows you that professional football, and I was more than journalist about football. Who knew? But I was a little bit surprised at Villa then. I wouldn't have expected them to finish in the top 4. They'd had a good end to the previous season, hadn't they? And I was expecting a little bit more. So again, maybe Liverpool caught them at a good time. And as Theo said, even that may be the case at the end of, we've said that Liverpool have had 7 tough games. Well, Villa have had 7 games where they're not used to it. It's the second time round because they'll have played, between September and October, they'd have had the 7 games with 2 Champions League games and the League Cup game as well. So they maybe it's just catching up with them a little bit. The other thing is that the game's on Saturday night at 8 o'clock. Now, at the time when that came through, we were all like, why? Why is it then? But Liverpool under the lights, we've seen it a couple of times now. The clocks have gone back, this, that and the other. And there was a special atmosphere against Leverkusen. I think the crowd have got the appetite for it now, I think.
Brighton as well, wasn't it?
And
2 games
exactly, yeah. And I also think that Man City will have played Brighton shortly before it.
Yeah. That's the 5:30, isn't it?
So Liverpool know Chelsea the next day, then.
Yeah, so Liverpool know exactly. Yeah, there's a chance that they could open up a bigger gap at the top, or they just need to win to get back on top. They'll know what they have to do, basically.
Even then, a draw should be enough to get top spot back, unless Brighton get
You're not thinking of drawing, though.
No, you're not.
You don't think of drawing against Villa. But
it shows how good their
things are set up for Liverpool to get a victory against Villa.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, they've got some good players, Villa, and I'm just looking at their squad. They've got players they can change the game, like you say, John Duran. They played Mings
against Liverpool away last year. That's where his form started, wasn't it? He came on.
Well, what I was going to say is that when he came on for the last 15 minutes, that 3-0 defeat, he was just shooting from everywhere. And I was thinking, I'd never seen him before. And I was like, he's key to get a goal
against Everton as well. I don't know whether that was a couple of weeks before or later when they won 4-0. I've seen him then. I was quite surprised in the summer that there was a lot of talk. I think Chelsea were going to buy him at one stage, and there was a lot of
talk with everyone there, aren't they?
Yeah.
Morgan Rogers is doing well for Villa.
I was literally about to say, I think Morgan Rogers looks a good player. They brought him through the system?
No, I think he came from Middlesbrough.
Did he?
Somewhere like that.
Looks a good player. So good team.
Also, they like, maybe less so under Emery, but runners from midfield used to just destroy Liverpool. That's why they were able to win 7-2 against them in that game. Admittedly, that's when everything they hit, even if it was going miles wide, it would hit something and go in. But that's where Ollie Watkins, for example, he's good at playing off the last defender, so Liverpool have to be wary of that. But then that's where this new formation can come in, and whether or not the two of them to protect in the back four will help in that respect.
Let's pick our teams and make our predictions for the game. Go on, I think I'll let you start. Kelleher in goal.
Kelleher in goal, Trent, Konate, Van Dijk, and it's a tough one left back because Tsimikas started the last two, Robertson started the two before that. Who's first choice? Are you just rotating them? Is it time for Robertson to come back in? I think Tsimikas has been playing better than Robertson, so I'll stick with him, but it could be either of them quite easily.
I don't think I did do a piece this week on the changes that Slot's made after a Champions League game, because he said, well, it was after the United game where they won, he says, look, we're a good start to the season, but we're only playing once a week. Yeah. Tell us what happens when, we're playing the Champions League games, it's twice a week and it's a high level in the Europa League, and we saw what happened last time Liverpool were in the Champions League. He got topped by Napoli and then didn't do very well against Real Madrid, didn't struggle with it and didn't do particularly well in the league either that season. So he wanted to see whether the players could prove themselves. So far they are, but I think he's made 4, 4 and 3 changes after the Champions League game so far. I don't think he'll make 4.
Is this the biggest gap they've had between them, though? Like Tuesday to Saturday night?
I think they had Wednesday to... Did they have Wednesday to Sunday? Leipzig to Arsenal. Yeah. So it's just that there's enough of a gap, but
a few hours more. But
I think, and also it's both at home.
Yeah,
I think Tsimikas is the only one. Do you bring Robertson back in? And to be honest, I wouldn't. So it would be same defence basically.
Yeah, same here. Clean sweep. Ian, take it away with your midfield.
I think the midfield, Curtis has to be in it, which I know he was on. I'd probably play Gravenberch and Jones, and then...
Would you give McAllister a go in the more advanced role?
Not yet, no.
I want to see him there, but I don't...
The thing is, that the last 3 or 4 games, I thought McAllister would be rested. Not counting the League Cup game, but he hasn't been. But I'd probably rest him for this one, so I'd say it was Gravenberch and Jones as the 2, and then Szoboszlai a bit further up.
Yeah, I'd say same 3. It's international break after it, so McAllister's probably about to get injured again anyway, isn't he? So go with the 3 that not got to have that long travel.
Sorry, so who are you going with?
Same 3 as Doyle.
Yeah. Okay, that's another clean sweep. Can we complete it? Theo, I'll let you pick a forward line.
Seems really harsh, but Nunes comes back in, so your central striker who scores a hat-trick isn't your central striker. Salah keeps his place, and then left wing. I'll go Diaz over Gakpo. He can keep his starting place. But
I'm going Gakpo on the left because you can bring Diaz on to roll around and tire them out.
So Diaz isn't playing despite scoring a hat-trick?
That's correct.
So we failed at the final hurdle. I'm going to go with the same one as Theo. I think you start Diaz from the left. It's harsh, isn't it? Either way. There's even a... I don't necessarily think he'll go same again because, like you say, I think there's some changes and bringing Nunes back might just give the forward line a bit more energy. But yeah, I'd do Nunes in the middle, Salah on the right and Diaz on the left. Predict something in.
I predict there will be 3 goals, of which 2 will be scored by Liverpool.
Who gets the other one?
Aston Villa.
2 on Liverpool.
3 on Liverpool. So, and there you have it. That's our podcast. Well done. Right. We'll be back on. We won't be back tomorrow, Friday, because this is our Friday episode recorded on Thursday. But we will be back on Monday, will we? You're in on Monday?
Yes.
And you're in on Monday? You'll make it work. You'll have to do it without me.
Devastated.
And then, we will look back at the Aston Villa game and then start thinking about the international break. So your questions, your comments, your thoughts, they are needed. Ian.Doyle@reachplc.com and he will get to them. Thank you very much. See you on Monday. Ta-ra.